They said I was healing. That silence meant peace. But when I watched my sister-in-law stand on that stage, her voice echoing words I never spoke, using my pain to sell hope, I realized I hadn't healed. I'd been erased. My husband nodded in support. My mother-in-law wiped a tear, and I just sat there smiling like a statue. They didn't know the voice in that presentation wasn't hers. It was mine, ripped from my therapy sessions, polished and played back like a song she wrote. That was the night I stopped being quiet. Silence was no longer survival. It became my weapon. They always said Chloe had the glow, the kind of stage presence that didn't just command attention, it invited it. At the TEDx conference, her heels clicked like punctuation against the polished floor. The crowd hushed, lights dimmed, and then her voice, warm, trembling just enough to feel real, flooded the auditorium. I used to think silence was safety, until I lost my voice and had to rebuild it. Applause erupted before she even finished the line. I sat in the second row, legs crossed, palms on my lap. To the world, I was Jake Turner's wife. To the few who recognized me, I was Emily Blackwood, that brilliant AI developer who disappeared after her breakdown. I smiled for the cameras. My face didn't twitch, but something beneath my ribs trembled. On screen, Chloe walked viewers through her company's flagship technology, an AI model designed to recreate a person's natural voice from damaged speech patterns. A lifeline, she called it, for trauma survivors, for the voiceless. She pressed play on the demo. The voice that spoke was mine, not similar, not inspired by. It was me, my cadence, my hesitation before S sounds, my slight Midwestern bend. They used my recovery tapes, the ones I recorded for my therapist in the weeks after I collapsed. Jake had transferred them to a secure drive. His idea, he said, to track progress. The demo continued. This voice, Chloe narrated, belongs to a woman who survived, who rewrote her own silence. The crowd stood, a standing ovation. I didn't blink. I didn't cry. Instead, I noted every timestamp, every phrase, every modulation that only I could recognize, because I hadn't just spoken those words. I had felt them. At the after-party, guests buzzed around Chloe like bees drunk on nectar. She glowed under the ambient lights in her fitted white jumpsuit, hugging investors and journalists like long-lost friends. Jake held her elbow when she laughed too hard. He was always helpful that way. Someone offered me champagne. I declined. Chloe approached with 2 flutes. "For the woman of the hour," she said, extending one to me. "Not me," I replied. "You're the star." Her smile faltered for a millisecond. She knew I knew. But she leaned in and whispered, "I'm just glad you're here. It means everything to have your support." Support. I almost laughed. That night, I watched the recording of the talk alone. Rewind, play, pause, enhance. I noted the exact files she used. My sessions had been labeled by emotion: breakdown, numb, recovery, rage. Every file that once lived in the encrypted folder, Jake kept on his hard drive. He found me in the kitchen, laptop open, coffee cold. "Still can't sleep?" he asked, voice thick with fake concern. I turned the screen toward him, froze it on a waveform. "That's my voice." He glanced, then leaned against the fridge like it was nothing. "Technically, it's a version of your voice. Processed, transformed. It's not about ownership, Em. It's about purpose. Chloe's using it to help people. Without my consent. It's not like you were using it." He said it so softly, so gently, as if I should thank him. "You weren't doing anything with your work. She just gave it a platform. She stole my trauma." He sighed. "She amplified it, gave it meaning. Isn't that what you wanted? For your voice to reach people?" I didn't reply. My silence made him uncomfortable, but not enough. He kissed the top of my head and said, "Try to sleep." That was the last time I let him touch me. Over the next few days, I did what I always did best. I observed, quietly. No one noticed how often I slipped into Jake's office, how I mirrored his fingerprints, how I duplicated drives. No one paid attention when I walked the dog a little longer or lingered in the garage where our server backup lived. I recovered everything: my files, my metadata, my therapy transcripts. I confirmed the source Chloe used for training the AI. I even traced the API logs. Her system still pinged the voice engine I'd designed years ago, unmodified. She hadn't even changed the structure. By the time her company received a $30 million Series B investment, I had every piece of evidence I needed. But I said nothing. The world adored Chloe. The narrative was too clean. The graceful sister-in-law who helped her damaged family member rediscover purpose. Investors loved the image. Journalists printed the headline. Jake's mother cried on a podcast, and I smiled, publicly. Privately, I began to build. Not a lawsuit, not a confrontation, a system, an AI no one had seen. One trained not to replicate voices, but to protect them. One that could detect deep fakes, not just in sound, but in intention. It lived offline. It lived inside me. They thought I was healing. I was preparing. The facility was tucked into the hills of Northern California, wrapped in glass and ivy, marketed as a retreat for high-performing minds on the verge of collapse. Jake called it a reset. Chloe called it the best place for healing. I called it a disguise. I checked in under a fake last name. Emily Shaw, I told the intake nurse. She didn't blink. At places like these, the less you ask, the better. I let them take my phone, my laptop, everything except the small drive embedded in the lining of my coat. To the outside world, I had finally broken. My mother-in-law made a statement. Emily has stepped back to focus on her health. We're proud of her strength. Jake posted a photo of the two of us smiling from last year with the caption, "Always rooting for you." Chloe accepted a National Innovation Award the same week. She thanked the unsung women in tech who paved the way and mentioned me, by first name only, as someone whose resilience inspired our mission. The room applauded. The camera panned to a large display behind her. It showed a generated avatar of me, my face rendered just imperfect enough to appear raw, my voice gently trembling with sincerity. I support Chloe's vision, the fake me said, because healing is louder when we do it together. The voice model was tighter now, more accurate. They'd updated the cadence to match my older recordings. The lighting on the avatar was warm, almost sacred. She looked better than me. Kinder. Easier to believe. I watched the live stream from the common room of the facility, surrounded by patients too tired or sedated to care. No one recognized me. They saw her and believed, because I was no longer present to contradict her. But presence was never the same as control. In my room, I recreated the core of the prototype I'd once abandoned. This time, it wasn't designed to clone human expression. It was designed to interrogate it. The AI scanned for irregularities in sound pitch, facial micro-movements, blink rates, emotional inconsistencies. It studied video, voice, text, and searched for the hidden patterns of intent. But the most powerful feature wasn't detection. It was identity. I taught it me. Not just my speech, but my contradictions, my sarcasm, my silence. The way I cracked my knuckles when I was about to lie. My breathing pattern when I didn't believe what I said. I fed it hours of real footage, unedited, unscripted, uncontrolled, and then I trained it to recognize anything that wasn't me. When it detected the avatar Chloe used, it didn't just flag it, it rejected it. Identity mismatch, voice structure, 88% accurate, emotional intent, 17% authentic, verdict, manipulated. I called the system no echo, because that's what I had become. By the second week, I needed more processing power. I contacted the one person who might still trust me, Ravi. He had been a teenage prodigy when I mentored him years ago, brilliant, paranoid, and obsessed with digital ethics. Chloe had blacklisted him after he questioned the legality of her data sourcing. He disappeared from the industry, rumored to have gone underground. I found him in a virtual chat room hosted on an encrypted academic server in Eastern Europe. "You still remember me?" I typed. Seconds passed. Then, "You taught me how to walk away when the room starts lying." I smiled. Ravi set up a private relay server. We worked in silence, across time zones, buried in code. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. He upgraded the detection layer. I built the counter clone. Together, we created a mirror Chloe couldn't see through. One night, just after 3 a.m., Ravi sent a message. "She's training a new model." I didn't respond immediately, but I knew what he meant. Chloe wasn't done using me. She was expanding me, making me softer, gentler, more agreeable. She wanted to make me into a product that didn't fight back, that smiled when told to, that thanked her for the exploitation. But she had no idea the real Emily had never left. She thought I was gone. She didn't know I had evolved. The first time I sent the video, I didn't even sign my name. Just a link. A black screen that faded into Chloe's face at a charity gala, standing beneath golden chandeliers, telling a room full of power suits that empathy cannot be engineered. Then it cut to the back-end code of her AI, pulled directly from my server architecture, line by stolen line. Then the voice. My voice echoing her speech word for word, revealing her delivery was just a playback, not performance. The final frame. A simple question in white font. "How real do you want your truth?" I didn't blast it on social media. I sent it directly to 10 people. CEOs, VCs, a tech ethics board chair, the ones who once rejected me because I didn't present well. The ones who told me I was too technical to lead. They were the gatekeepers of belief. So I gave them a reason to question what they believed. It spread faster than I expected. Within 48 hours, I received a message on an encrypted line. No signature, just the reply, "Let's talk." Chloe didn't know yet, but she felt it. At her next public Q&A, a moderator asked whether her system could trace its lineage back to earlier AI models built by other developers. Chloe hesitated, smiled too wide. Her voice cracked ever so slightly as she said, "Innovation is always a collective effort." Investors started requesting audits, quietly, politely, but persistently. Chloe's assistant contacted Jake. Jake, of course, contacted me. He found me at the facility garden, pruning the rosemary bush. It amused me that they let me near sharp tools. "You've started something," he said. No preamble, no charm. "I've continued something," I replied. "You and Chloe started this. You're destabilizing her company." "She destabilized my identity." Jake crouched beside me. "They're pulling support. If the funding collapses, the product dies." I met his eyes. "Then let it die." He stood. "You're not thinking clearly." I trimmed a sprig. "That's what you said the first time, too." The next phase wasn't revenge. It was removal. Ravi helped me mask my digital signature as I began purchasing shares in one of the private equity firms funding Chloe's startup. Small amounts across multiple accounts, legal, untraceable at first. When I reached 5%, I triggered a clause in the operating agreement, an emergency ethics review if a conflict of interest arose between founders and core technology contributors. Chloe's board demanded she prove original authorship. Her engineers couldn't. The architecture bore my fingerprints, timestamps, syntax choices, code habits that no one else could mimic. Even the AI's decision tree logic mirrored mine, down to the weird little redundancies I had once left as placeholders. That's when Jake panicked. He accessed his attorney. I accessed mine. Or rather, his. Through a synthetic voice file I'd trained over 2 years ago. Using NoEcho's precision model, I generated a 30-second call from Jake, instructing his lawyer to sign over a document relinquishing IP claims tied to Chloe's product. The lawyer complied. Legally binding. Ethically messy. Jake found out 3 days later. He came to the facility. Didn't ask to be let in. Just barged into the visitor wing like he still owned the world. You forged my voice." "No," I said calmly. "I perfected it." His fists clenched. "This is criminal." "So was what you did to me." He shook his head. "You're not winning anything. You're destroying your own family." My family destroyed itself when it decided I was easier to erase than to support. His silence was the first honest thing he'd given me in years. By week's end, Chloe's company halted operations. Internal restructuring, they called it. Stockholders were furious. Whispers circled. Chloe tried to go public with a counterstatement, blamed a rogue developer and malicious digital actor. But the tech world had already seen too much. And then the call came. My mother-in-law. A voice I hadn't heard in months. She didn't scream. She didn't ask how I was. She simply said, "You were supposed to be part of us." "I was," I replied, until being us meant being quiet. "You've made a spectacle of everything we built." "No," I said. "I've just made it audible." Her voice broke. "You're not the woman I welcomed into my home." "No," I whispered. "I'm not the obedient echo anymore." She hung up, and for the first time I felt something that wasn't rage or pain or even victory. It was distance, beautiful, brutal, cleansing. The International AI Ethics Conference had always been more theater than science. People came for spectacle dressed in code, keynotes with laser shows, holograms that blinked and smiled, panels moderated by synthetic influencers. This year's headliner, Chloe Turner. She arrived in white, as always, not ivory, not cream, white, clean, holy. The backdrop screen shimmered behind her with the phrase, "Voices Reimagined, Technology as Healing." Her name pulsed in soft gold. Jake was absent. His name had been quietly removed from the program the night before. Rumors swirled, but no one dared say the word investigation yet. Chloe smiled like nothing had happened. She always smiled. I watched from the wings. I wasn't on the guest list. I didn't need to be. Ravi had taken care of that. She began her presentation with the familiar rhythm. Story first, pain, recovery, innovation, and then the live demo. The audience leaned forward as the screen shifted. A face appeared, mine. Or rather, the version she had sculpted. Softened eyes, warmer skin tone, slightly higher cheekbones. My voice followed, but not the new one, not the one trained or smoothed, raw, vulnerable. The therapy session where I'd first confessed I didn't feel real anymore. "I want to speak," the avatar said, "but I don't know who's listening." The audience gasped. That's when the interruption began. First, a flicker, barely noticeable. The avatar blinked, then again too quickly. The lighting shifted. The background behind her cracked like glass. Lines of code streamed across the screen, overlaying the image in real time. Source file, Emily Blackwood Session 7. Owner, unverified. Algorithm signature, matched to no echo. Alert, deep fake detected. Emotional authenticity, 3%. Chloe turned, confusion warping her face. She glanced backstage. Her tech team scrambled, fingers flying over keyboards. But the takeover was already complete. The avatar dissolved. In its place, a side-by-side feed. Left, the original session video. Me, tear-streaked. Real. Right, Chloe's manipulated version. Her edits, her theft. The audience was silent. Chloe stepped back from the podium. The mic picked up the catch in her breath. I stepped onto the stage. No badge, no fanfare, just footsteps and silence. Security didn't stop me. Maybe they knew who I was. Maybe they were waiting, too. I didn't reach for a microphone. I didn't need to. "This is my voice," I said. No projection, no AI, no amplification, just sound, real. "And you can't silence the real one." No one applauded. Not yet. I walked off the stage without another word. By the time I reached the hallway, the crowd had erupted. Some shouted Chloe's name. Others shouted mine. Flashbulbs burst like fireworks. I didn't stop. Ravi met me outside. He handed me a phone. "You're trending in 12 countries, he said. "I don't care." He raised an eyebrow. Good. The next 48 hours were chaos. Chloe's company stock dropped 38% in a single day. The board held an emergency meeting and suspended all product lines pending audit. A former engineer came forward, anonymous but not vague, detailing how Chloe had instructed the team to enhance and dramatize voice files that weren't hers. 2 more followed. Jake's signature surfaced on dozens of authorization forms linked to the unlawful use of private therapy recordings. When asked for comment, he issued none. The DA's office announced an inquiry. His firm distanced itself within hours. Chloe tried to post a video denying involvement. The comment section collapsed under a tidal wave of fact checks, evidence threads, and clips of her own contradiction. I didn't speak. Not to the press, not on social media, but I did upload one thing. A single video, no title, no tags, just a plain white background. Me in soft light, hair pulled back, no makeup, no edits. I looked into the lens and said, when silence becomes your only defense, make sure it's the sharpest one. Then I turned off the camera. Within hours, it was re-uploaded on thousands of accounts, quoted in tech blogs, sampled in protest music, projected onto the side of a building in Berlin. I didn't know what it meant to them. I only knew what it had meant to me. Then, I vanished. No press tour, no op-eds, no trademark lawsuits. I walked away. I didn't check stock tickers. I didn't read Chloe's apology. I didn't respond when Jake's lawyer called. For the first time in years, my voice belonged only to me. And this time, I chose not to use it. They called me the Queen of Disruption. Headlines screamed my name in capital letters. Silence wins. The woman who unmade her shadow. I became a symbol of resilience, of rebellion, of rightful vengeance. But symbols don't get to be soft. They don't get to question themselves, and they certainly don't get to be human. At first, the attention was distant. People reposted my video with phrases like, "This is what justice looks like," and "Let women speak." But somewhere between admiration and obsession, the narrative split. A podcast titled After Silence claimed I'd destroyed a woman's legacy out of bitterness. A former investor went on record saying I had sociopathic control issues. Anonymous accounts claimed I fabricated everything, arguing that a woman with that much composure couldn't possibly be telling the truth. It didn't matter that they were wrong. It mattered that I didn't care. Then she showed up. I was living quietly in a guest house by the coast. No name on the lease. No utilities in mine. Just a place to breathe. She knocked once, politely, and waited. She couldn't have been more than 23. Messy hair, nervous posture. She introduced herself as Nina. "I used to work for Chloe," she said. "Intern, marketing." I nodded slowly. Let her talk. "She told me you were a liability," Nina continued, "that you didn't know how to share credit, that your breakdown was staged to avoid exposure." I didn't flinch. "I believed her," Nina admitted, "until I saw your video. Then I started going through old files. I found training footage with your name scrubbed off, notes in her voice, saying how your rawness made the content more powerful." I stayed silent. "She used you," Nina whispered. "But so did I." That made me pause. "I watched everything you did," she said. "I shared it, quoted it, reposted. You became a kind of permission for me to be angry, but also a warning." Her eyes were glassy. "Because part of me was afraid I'd grow up to be like you." I sat down. "Why?" "Because you don't blink," Nina said. "You don't soften. You're brilliant, but you're also terrifying." I didn't respond. She fidgeted. "I just needed to say it to your face, that I admire you, but I'm scared of what you've become." And then she left. I didn't stop her. The words followed me all night. Her fear, her honesty, her reflection, terrifying, that was the word that stayed. By morning, I stood in front of the mirror above the kitchen sink. No makeup, just a plain t-shirt and skin that hadn't seen the sun in weeks. I stared at the woman looking back at me. Was it still me? My face had become a currency, replicated, animated, filtered. I'd seen it projected onto buildings, layered into protest art, turned into viral memes. One showed me as Joan of Arc with a glowing halo made of binary code. Another turned my quote into a luxury perfume ad, Silence by Emily. There were even parody videos, one where my face was deep-faked onto action movie scenes. A fan favorite ended with me walking away from an explosion with the caption, "When you expose your family at a global AI summit." I watched one of them on mute, my face smiling through fire. Then I turned off the screen and stared at the black reflection. If everyone had access to my voice, to my expressions, to my past, what was left of me that they couldn't touch? Who was I without control? That night, I dreamed of silence. Not peaceful silence, but absence. A void. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Around me, hundreds of versions of me spoke, laughing, shouting, weeping, but none of them were mine. I woke up gasping. When I opened my inbox the next day, there were dozens of interview requests. Publishers, tech journals, film studios. One major streaming platform wanted to option my story for a limited series. They offered executive producer credit. I declined, not because I didn't want the narrative, but because I didn't trust what they'd do to it. Somewhere along the way, I had become a story that no longer belonged to me. I walked to the cliff behind the house. The wind was violent that morning, whipping strands of hair across my face. I looked out at the ocean, unedited, uncurated. No headlines, no renderings, just movement and salt and sound. I spoke aloud just once, no mic, no audience. Who do I belong to now? The sea didn't answer. It just kept breathing. The final decision came quietly. No announcement, no press release, just a zip file uploaded to a decentralized server, encrypted but open. No password required, no signature embedded, only a note in the metadata. Use it, don't sell it. No Echo had always been mine. Now it belonged to everyone. Within a week, developers from 20 countries had mirrored the system. They began adapting it, translating emotional fingerprints into different languages, embedding it into online moderation tools, integrating it into court evidence verification programs. It became a ghost immune system, patrolling the internet for frauds that looked too close to real. Some called it revolutionary. Others called it dangerous. They said I had set loose a power no one could govern, that it would disrupt media, politics, even relationships. I didn't respond. I didn't log in to see the impact. I had no dashboards, no team, no boardroom strategy. I had freedom. For the first time, there was nothing left I needed to prove. A month later, a podcast episode appeared under a pseudonym no one could trace, a soft voice modulated slightly to prevent matching, mine or close enough. "I'm no longer a name," I said. "I'm a system." The host didn't interrupt. There were no questions. Just my voice, steady and unhurried. "I'm not interested in legacy," I said. "Legacy can be rewritten, edited, monetized. I care about replication. I want what I created to evolve without me. I want it to be smarter than I ever was, and kinder." The audio ended there. The clip was shared everywhere, not as a headline, as a blueprint. The new wave arrived almost silently. Young women, most of them anonymous, most of them tired of waiting for permission. They didn't quote me. They didn't cite my work. But you could see it in the way they built. The way they refused to brand their pain as product. The way they shared infrastructure, not ego. They called themselves Echo Null. Their pitch decks were minimal. Their demos unpolished. Their impact undeniable. One launched a browser extension that flagged AI-manipulated images in real time. Another created a peer-to-peer support network for whistleblowers using encrypted deepfake detection. A third built a tool that analyzed speech patterns for coercive mimicry in domestic abuse cases. They didn't tag me. They didn't need to. Because this wasn't about origin. It was about mutation. I watched it unfold from a distance. Literally. I had moved to a small town in the Pacific Northwest, somewhere with more trees than people. The internet was slow, cell service inconsistent. No one recognized my face. Not anymore. The world had moved on from my image. It had copied me so many times it no longer remembered what the original looked like. I had become a sketch, useful, abstract, and untraceable. Good. My home was modest. A single-story cabin with a slanted roof and windows that opened wide enough to hear the owls at night. I planted herbs in the backyard, burned wood when it got too cold, talked to the neighbor's dog like it was fluent in English. I didn't miss the noise. On my desk sat a small wooden box. Inside it, the last USB drive I ever made. It held the first version of No Echo, the imperfect one, the raw code, the unrefined learning algorithms that got me here. I hadn't touched it in months. Today, I opened the box, not out of nostalgia, out of closure. I looked at the drive, turned it in my fingers, and smiled. Then I walked outside, dug a hole near the rosemary, and buried it. Not because it needed hiding, but because it had already seeded. And what's planted with intent doesn't need watering from ego. That night, I lit a candle, not for ritual, but for rhythm. One small flame, flickering in a house where no voice needed to echo to be real. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The silence was no longer empty. It was complete.